Today we're going to be looking at some of the big names on the potentially on the market. The San Jose Sharks want to get super aggressive this offseason.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of the Western Conference Tuesdays on the Locked On NHL show. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today we are going to get aggressive and looking at guys who, if Mike Grier wanted to maybe package a trade around the 14th overall pick plus stuff and try to maybe land one of the big fish out there. So all these guys are either have 1 year left on their deals or they're an RFA. So we're going to dig into some of these guys and kind of why it would make sense for the Sharks if they wanted to, again, get super aggressive. So before we do all that, why don't you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we're going to start with probably the biggest name that is potentially available this offseason, and that is one Mitch Marner. It can already feel a lot of Sharks fans like, no, I don't want him on my team. Right, we know the core four and its failures to get out of the first round, with the exception of 1 year. And Mitch Marner and basically all those guys have had their fair share of blame with it. But again, right now I'm looking at trying to get good players on the Sharks any way possible. So let's worry about playoff performances once we get into the playoffs. That's kind of my thought with it right now. So let's dig into Mitch Marner and kind of get to know the player, and we'll discuss kind of why it would make sense, why it probably doesn't make sense. And with all these, again, these are aggressive. Like, I don't think any of these are going to happen, but there is a world. So we're just gonna have some fun today. So Mitch Marner, 6 foot, 190-pound forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs, has 1 year left on his deal at $10.93 million AAV. So he has a non-movement clause. If he doesn't want to get traded to a certain place, he doesn't have to be traded there. 69 games this year, had 26 goals, 59 assists, 158 shots on goal, played over 21 minutes a night, 53.69 Corsi for, 60.55 or 60.22, goals for. Looking at his evolving hockey card, again, almost 1,500 minutes of ice time this year, logged a ton of ice time. 214 of that was on the power play, 141 of that was on the penalty kill. So he plays all the situations all the time, and he's good. He's very good. 93rd percentile player, 94th percentile offensively, 51st percentile defensively, would be an absolute, would raise the floor of the Sharks power play, which was respectable last year, especially at the end of the year. And when you keep in context of the pieces that were on the Sharks power play, plays on the penalty kill, does a good job of not taking penalties, maybe doesn't draw as many as you would potentially want. Pulling up his zone cards from Corey Snyder, and it's a lot of positives, especially when it comes to general offense and passing. He's very good at doing all that, right? You saw all the assists he had. I think it was last season, he had like a monster, scoring streak. Does a solid job in the defensive zone, especially when it comes to kind of exiting the zone, which is something the Sharks struggle to do. Does a good job of, kind of that's that area where it's let's get the puck moving in the other way. But again, The big thing, right, of course, with Mitch Marner is he has a full no movement. So there has been word that he is willing to waive it, right? Especially after I think he was it was his turn this year to kind of be the GOAT in the bad way for the Toronto Maple Leafs and their latest playoff failures. So why it would we'll start with why it would make sense for the Sharks. You're helping your young players out by adding a star to the team, right? Who, again, he's 27, has one more year left on his deal at $10.9 million. You're making life easy for Celebrini, Will Smith, William Macklin, whomever else, because Mitch Marner is on the team. Like, he is your best player on this the Sharks team. Makes a ton of sense for them to try to add talent to a team that is desperate for talent. As we saw, a reason why they lost, so many games last year. They just a lot of times just didn't have the horses to compete. Because again, this team was bad, right? Mikael Granlund, we love you, but you're right. Mikael Granlund playing on, as your 1C the entire season isn't a recipe for success. But right, if you brought Marner here, you could literally run a line of like Eklund, Celebrini, Marner. You could keep Granlund, Zetterlund, whoever else, Clean Caution, whoever, if you want to sign somebody else. And like the Sharks have the cap space, right? We talked about yesterday just how much cap space this team has going into the offseason and absorbing an $11 million contract that's only got 1 year left. They could do that because that would get them to the cap floor and would provide some sort of a little bit of star power, right? Then, right, especially 1 year left, maybe Marner, he likes it here. You can kind of go into the season with an open, like, we want to keep Marner. If he wants to be here, you can discuss contracts after that. 2, you could trade him at the trade deadline where you could flip him. I know that Sharks don't have a retention slot, but you can find somebody for that, and you still get a really nice haul back for Marner, who, again, I know the playoff issues are there, and again, Marner's. We'll talk about playoff failures when the Sharks are playing playoff games, so we have a wild for that. And then, like, it kind of gives you some options. Like, it's not like, or Mitch Marner leaves in a year and gives your young guys a lot of experience. And so what? So maybe, it stinks losing I would assume it'd be the 14th overall pick plus whatever stuff. You might have to go the 14th overall pick this year plus Vegas's pick next year, I think would have to be kind of the start for somebody of Mitch Marner's. Why it doesn't make sense. Why would Mitch Marner want to come here? Like, yes, maybe he loves California, and maybe, I don't know, I've never met the guy. Maybe after dealing with Toronto's media, like having to deal with San Jose's media would be, a walk in the park for him. But I assume if he does get traded, he wants to go to a place that's probably getting close to breaking through, right? You've had a lot of playoff failures, and maybe just a fresh start for a team that is getting ready to kind of burst through. So, I would kind of look at one of those bubble type teams. I'm not trying to pick names here or anything like that, but a team that feels like they're right on the verge of kind of making their run. Buffalo, right? Buffalo kind of. Maybe if Patrick Kane doesn't re-sign, look at like the Red Wings, teams like that. They're like young, exciting, almost ready to go, and then like dropping in a guy like Marner who really can help their young players kind of take that next level. And again, right, you're redistributing of kind of the star power on the team. So I don't think it's going to happen. It's fun to talk about. And again, please don't get mad at me. I can already see the comments and why calling me an idiot. I'm just again, it's the middle of May. So just want to hit some of these big guys just in case. You never know. All right, we'll get into some other options here, including Martin Necas, Nikolaj Ehlers, Jakob Chychrun, and why those guys might make a little bit more sense here in just 1 second. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So maybe you like the Dallas Stars to win game 1 of the Western Conference. Maybe you're all Vamos Gatos. Maybe you want the Rangers. So you pick your winner. If you win, you get $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right, Martin Necas. So he's been an interesting player, especially with the Carolina Hurricanes, who starting to kind of hit that point where they need to pay a lot of people. And they do have a lot of cap space going into this off season, but you're already paying Aho. Kotkaniemi is probably going to get bought out, but you got to pay Seth Jarvis. Like you have to pay. They're trying to bring back Gensel. Like they have a bunch of people that they have to pay. That's kind of the price of drafting really well. So, and one guy who could be potentially available is Martin Necas, who is an RFA. So let's start with get to know him a little bit before we kind of talk about the whole RFA and how you would kind of navigate this scenario. So, because I know what you're thinking, just offer sheet him, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So, Necas 6'2", 189 pound, 77 games this year, had 24 goals, 29 assists, 231 shots on goal, played 17-21 a night. 58.09 Corsi for. Also, looking at Carolina's Corsi for numbers are ridiculous. It's a lot of numbers that look just like that. Goals for 46.94%. So, since he's an RFA, we can kind of project what his next contract would look like. So he's projected to get an 8-year deal at $8.8 million. It's a lot of money. He's very good. He's only 25. So you're paying this deal through his age 33 season, right? Kind of yesterday's episode, that was kind of the cutoff for a lot of these guys here. Looking at his evolving hockey card, 40th percentile, played first line minutes, good offensively. The defense really kind of held him back. He played 1,336 minutes. 1,100 of those were even strength. Does not kill penalties. 162 minutes power play. Power play isn't as good as you would expect, but the defense is not great. So 40th percentile player, 67th percentile offensively, 5th percentile defensively. Looking at his card from from all three zones, great general offense. Like you're seeing the offense there. Like he's great at producing shots, especially coming from Carolina, right? Where they Corsi Kings, right? That's what they do. Awesome job at controlled entries. So getting the puck into the offensive zone, getting the puck out of the defensive zone, stuff that the Sharks need help at. He is great in that area. Defensively, again, maybe not his strong point, but I think you could find the right partner for him. So why not just offer sheet him? Especially if the Sharks could offer him a 7. The way offer sheets go is as an RFA, a team can offer you a contract. It's very rarely kind of done. If Jasper Kotkaniemi is kind of the big one, last one that was done. So you offer him a contract if it's 7 years at $8.8 million, because 7 years is the most that the Sharks could offer. The Carolina Hurricanes can offer him 8 years. So Sharks would offer 7 years at $8.8 million, or whatever they offer him. So we'll just kind of use that term as projected. The Carolina Hurricanes then have a week basically to accept or reject the contract. If they accept it, they basically like, okay, we're going to give you this contract, and that's it. And that's basically the contract with it. So if the Carolina Hurricanes don't, the Sharks basically get they have to give up assets to the Carolina Hurricane, or whoever, in this case, it would be the Carolina Hurricanes. The problem is with this type of contract, what you're giving up is massive. And it has to be your own pick. So the Sharks actually couldn't put an offer sheet, especially at this cost, because at $8.8 million AAV, the Sharks have to give up 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick in the next draft. Since this would take place after the 2024 draft, the Sharks have to give up their first pick in 2025, their first pick in 2026. These are theirs. They can't pick between their pick and Vegas. It'd be the San Jose Sharks pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick, both those from the 2025 draft. Problem is the Sharks don't have their 2025 first-round pick as part of the Tomas Hertl trade. So what will be more likely is the Sharks would try to work out a trade. And if they knew this was something they wanted to potentially do, this would be either like a draft day trade where maybe you offer the 14th overall pick plus other stuff, right? To get it done and get him here. And then like we know that he's still in our face, he's still on his rights. So even if you can't get a contract right away, you own his rights. Like he's not going anywhere for this. So you own his rights. You can kind of work out a long-term contract. Also, if you own his rights, then you can offer him that 8-year deal, which is always a little bit more, I think, enticing for players as that extra security for them. So I think that would be more likely because the Sharks they don't have the assets to offer sheet. They'd have to trade their third-round pick back from Vegas, which they could definitely do, to then turn around and offer sheet it to give up that much stuff. And I frankly don't want to have to give up. That's a lot of stuff, especially a first-round pick that's probably most likely going to be in the top 5, for sure going to be in the top 10 next year. You're giving up that type of pick to the Carolina Hurricanes, who, yes, I know they're kind of in their window, Stanley Cup window, when there's a lot of questions around, but the way that team drafts and develops, right, this feels very Erik Karlsson-esque again, where you're giving up a massive pick, that becomes a massive pick for another team. I'm not doing that. So I think you work out a trade, like maybe it's to sign a trade and then a contract extension with them, whether that way you can potentially offer some prospects, right? We know Carolina, they've done a great job of building up their prospect pool while also contending. They're great at drafting. So maybe you can kind of work from your prospect pool to try to pull something here, especially as you've built up your prospect pool. I'm not trading like a Will Smith or anything like that, but you could talk me into some of the other guys like a Bjugstad or a David Edstrom or somebody in that range, plus the 14th overall pick, plus something else type of pick. Maybe if it's a roster player, whatever, right? But you can't offer sheet him because you don't have the stuff to offer sheet him, especially at what his contract is expected to be. And if you go too low, why would he sign the offer sheet? That's the other thing, right? Is he actually has to sign the contract. So I don't see an offer sheet coming for him. But if you wanted to trade for him, that's something I think the Hurricanes, who could be in there, you could maybe offer some young, cheap players as they're trying to build around their core going forward. So we'll look at 2 other guys here, Nikolaj Ehlers and then Jakob Chychrun. And if maybe trying to acquire one of these guys might be a little bit more doable for the Sharks. All right, let's look at Nikolaj Ehlers, who, again, kind of Winnipeg in the same boat as Carolina, where I think last year we all expected them to kind of take a step back. They had one of their really great season, but got knocked out in the first round. They entered the offseason with about $13 million in cap space, with 17 players on the roster. And they have to pay Cole Perfetti. They have Tyler Toffoli, who's going to be a free agent. They've got some guys that they're, kind of having to make some big decisions on. Former Sharks like Dylan DeMello, Brandon Dillon. They had to find a new backup goalie. They've got a couple of decisions here. So, and then Nikolaj Ehlers, who's got 1 year left on his contract at $6 million. So he could be a potential piece that they look to move to try to give themselves a bit more cap space. So let's get to know Ehlers a little bit more. 6 foot, 172 pounds. Like I said, 1 year left at his contract at $6 million AAV. 82 games last year, 25 goals, 36 assists, 233 shots on goal, 1552 time on ice, 54.68 Corsi for, 65.26 goals for. So whenever he was on the ice, they were scoring goals. 80th percentile player, 69th, very nice percentile offensively, 62 percentile defensively. Played 1,300 minutes altogether. First line minute, just under first line minutes. About a little under 1,100 on the power play, 177. Does not play on the penalty kill. Absolute monster in the offensive zone. Expected goals above replacement, really high. Goals above replacement defensively is pretty solid. Power play numbers are bad, which is really weird to see, especially with this type of player. Does a good job of drawing penalties and not taking penalties. Looking at his zone, all three zone chart from our good friend Corey Schneider, great, just a lot of blues and dark blues. Awesome in the offensive zone, creating chances, creating passes, creating shots, whatever you need him to do in the offensive zone, he's doing that. Also does a great job of passing and making his line mates better, getting one-timers, getting, just amazing, just good shots off, right? Zone entries is also really good at that. Again, trying to help find somebody who can get the puck into the offensive zone. Good job with defensive zone for the most part. Maybe a little bit of struggles at getting the puck out of the zone a little bit, but overall, getting the puck out of the defensive zone. Let me be a little clearer, but overall, really, really solid. I think kind of underrated type of player. And again, for Winnipeg, who's kind of starting to be in a little bit of a tough situation here with their cap space, especially with some of the decisions that they have. And I think they really want to try to improve their blue line. Moving off a guy like Ehlers kind of could make a bunch of sense for them and for the Sharks, right? Again, you're adding a player who he's 28 right now. You can kind of figure out the contract situation, kind of like what we talked about with Marner, where play him for a year and kind of see what you got and see if it works out. And then if not, you can trade him at the trade deadline or trade his rights in the off, or not trade his, or you could kind of figure out what you want to do with him. So I out of the forwards, I think that one would make the most sense for the Sharks. Again, you're probably starting with that 14th pick and then plus more. We'll see, and maybe it's maybe you can swing if they're trying to add some defensive players. I know nobody wants your garbage, but maybe you can offer somebody to help kind of alleviate your log jam on the blue line. If it's a Matt Benning or somebody like that, where it gives them another piece on the blue line and it kind of helps alleviate your defensive blue line issues. And all those guys are kind of on cheap contracts, especially for a team that is looking for some kind of cheap contracts there. So finally, also, you got blue line, Jakob Chychrun. He has made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to be in Ottawa long term. He has 1 year left on his deal at $4.6 million. 6'2", 220-pound defenseman. 82 games, 14 goals, 27 assists, 204 shots on goal, 22-23 time on ice. Corsi for 50.02%. Goals for 41.78%. really nice hockey evolving card here. Plays way above first pairing minutes. Monster on the power play. Doesn't really play shorthanded at that much, but again, you have other guys who I think could be part of that. 82nd percentile player, 88th percentile offensively, 57th percentile defensively. Is left-handed. I don't really care about the handedness right now. I just want to add players. General offense is pretty solid, does a really good job at kind of creating one-timers for other players. That's kind of where he's at. Does struggle with like the defensive zone retrievals and kind of getting the puck out of his zone a little bit, which is an area the Sharks do struggle with and are trying to kind of get better. You're at least hoping get better in there. His failed exits per 60 is pretty high. So it's trying to get out of the zone and you fail. He kind of struggles again, trying to get it out there. But again, I think for a guy, as the Sharks are trying to find some sort of answers on the blue line, guys who can you get the puck, get the puck moving and provide some more offense. Chychrun, a guy like Chychrun could make a lot of sense for the Sharks. I don't know. Again, Ottawa's kind of stuck in here where he's basically said, like, I'm not going to sign a long-term contract with you. Right, like if he's not going to sign a long-term contract, it does make sense for them to try to maybe move on, especially because you have like other guys on the blue line, right? Ottawa enters the offseason with about $12 million in cap space, 16 of 23 roster spots. They have Shane Pinto, who they gotta kind of re-sign. You do have Jake Sanderson, who they signed to a long-term deal. You have Thomas Chabot. I know Chychrun is kind of that guy that they have to kind of make a decision on here. That you hope for them. Josh Norris comes back healthy at some point, and it's starting to feel bad there in that situation. And again, for this team that feels like they really need to do something here, maybe offloading Chychrun, using that money elsewhere for them kind of would make a bunch of sense. So they do have their first round pick this year, and they do also have the Bruins first round pick. So I don't know if adding another first round pick makes a lot of sense, but maybe they're a team that could, again, like we saw with them when they traded for DeBrincat, take the Sharks pick and then flip it for something else as they're trying to find guys who can help immediately. Because again, this team feels like it's supposed to have broken through by now, and they just can't find that breakthrough. So again, all these are like super aggressive moves that I don't expect to happen. But it's just fun to talk about because, right, it's fun to dream and have big boy thoughts about what could be. So, but again, I think Mike Grier is going to be very like deliberate with his money, and I think the guys we talked about on Monday make a lot more sense than some of these guys. And I think again, like Grier wants to continue to add to the pipeline and have these guys kind of slowly grow and be these hometown pieces. That's why I don't see the Sharks trading for one of these big guys. But it's always fun to talk about. So we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be doing some more draft stuff. So going to be looking at the scheduled to look at kind of all the goalies. Our good friend Gregory Balk's going to be joining us to discuss the goalie class, and we'll kind of, as the Sharks need to find some sort of answer at goalie of the future. So make sure you guys are following along for that. We'll have another draft profile, of course, coming later this week. Plenty of good stuff as we get you guys ready for free agency in the draft. So make sure you're following wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryhole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.